Before we get started with this video, I just want to give a clear warning that this video was recorded on Friday before the tournament scene really got popping with the new format. So some of these card rankings I already disagree with, but check out the way that we are standing right now with these rankings and let me know what you think. Hope you guys enjoy. Yo, what up everybody? This is Nothing But Bangers, aka MBB, aka Bangers, aka I've got my top 15 cards along with some honorable mentions for you in this video from the latest Pokemon TCG Pocket Set Celestial Guardian. So stay tuned for the controversy, stay tuned for the hot takes, because I know that there are some cards on this list and off the list that people are going to be talking about in the comments. So let's dive in. The honorable mentions will be the first part of the video, so let's just get these out of the way. But I want to start with Oranguru. Basically, Oranguru, right? I just said Oranguru and then Oranguru, like whatever. Anyway, so Oranguru is a card that I think right now is like not very strong, but in the future, if we ever get a card that is a Pokemon, right, that says, hey, copy any attack from your from your discard pile or copy any attack on your field, then suddenly, you know, this may be really, really good. And so I've kept this on my honorable mentions for that reason. But like as of right now, like I just don't think that there's like a lot of room to play something like this. And I think it's probably like a little slow to be very good. But who knows, maybe somebody surprises us with like a really cool control deck and Oranguru kind of finds a way to like make a place for itself in the meta. Another card that didn't quite make the list but is definitely on my radar is going to be Alima. Alima is one of those cards that it's a really cool ability, but I think a lot of the decks that are like playing normal type Pokemon are just playing Berry, and they just don't have room for Alima, right? They may play one Alima, for example, and I think like that's the biggest reason why I don't have it on this list, because a lot of the decks that like would play it are just like not, they don't have room, or they're only playing one. But it's still like a really cool card, and definitely has great synergy with stuff like Snorlax, right? But again, I just right now, and again, we'll come back and look at this at like 2-3 weeks or whatever. But right now, just in the state of the game, I would say that I would keep this off of my top 15. Another card that didn't quite make the cut is going to be Passimian EX. If you watch me on the live stream, I was like, man, dude, hey, don't sleep on this card. Honestly, don't sleep on this card. But right now, it's just one of those things where 2 prizes, giving up 2 points is just so detrimental to like any game plan, right? And unless you have like a deck where you're playing like, you know, double Mars, Passimian, and then a sweeper, like that can just like straight up sweep the game no matter what, this is just a really hard sell for me. We've seen some people trying to cook with this in Arceus, right? People trying to cook with Arceus and Tyranitar and Passimian, and like, you know, even like Alolan Raichu. But again, like I think the problem with all those cards like Alolan Raichu, Arceus EX, like a lot of them are like, they're kind of fragile, right? They kind of like get one shot by a lot of things in the game, and that's a little bit of an issue, right? Because you're already giving up 2 points to activate the ability, and then now you're also like putting something that's glassy out there, hoping that you can sweep the rest of your opponent's Pokemon. So right now, I don't have it in my top 15, but hey, maybe in the future, fighting really finds a way to use this card, right? Or maybe another Pokemon finds a way to use it. So speaking of another Pokemon using Passimian, here's Alolan Raichu. Now this card, it checks Charizard so hard, right? This card checks a lot of Pokemon that, you know, require 4 energy to attack, 5 energy to attack. It checks it really hard, but the thing is, it's 140 HP and it needs 3 energies. So like, what are you using to turbocharge it? Are you using Pachirisu? So that way you're combining Alolan Raichu, Pachirisu, and Oricorio. Is that what you're doing? And if you're doing that, well, like it's gonna be a little slow, right? You're gonna need everything to be ideal, right? You're gonna need that Pachirisu start. You're gonna need that Pikachu on the bench. You're going to need on-curve Alolan Raichu. You're going to need a way to pivot into Alolan Raichu. And then, you know, if you combine it with something like Oricorio, I still think like you're still like, you know, maybe you're going to win some games, but I'm just not sold on it being a top 15 card just yet. But obviously, again, hey, we'll check in 2-3 weeks. The other card or cards, I should say, that I'll leave off the top 15. And this is my last honorable mention before we get into the top 15 is going to be Turtonator and Kiawe. Kiawe is a supporter that adds 2 fire energy from your energy zone to either an Alolan Marowak or a Turtonator, and it combos with this card, right? So basically, I'm kind of looking at them together. We've seen some people trying to cook with Turtonator, Kiawe, and they're playing it alongside Incineroar. It may even be the answer to playing something like that alongside Charizard. But for right now, I'm not super sold on it, but it could definitely be a solid answer if, you know, that ends up being the best way to play Charizard and Incineroar, so that way you don't auto lose to Oricorio. Now, there just may be better options, because that's like a lot of deck spaces to take up, but it may be the best option. And again, we'll just have to check back in a few weeks. Number 15 is going to be a combination of Banette and Tapu Lele, and you could even throw in the Psychic Oricorio. So again, Banette is going to be a stage 1 that for 1 energy it deals 30 damage, and basically your opponent cannot take any energy from the energy zone and attach it to their active Pokemon the next turn. So this is kind of like a control card that has been featured in some Psychic decks, and again, like you can pair it with this Tapu Lele and obviously the Psychic Oricorio as well, that when it gets knocked out, it deals a total of 80 damage. But again, the Tapu Lele, 90 HP, basic. It's got some good synergy with the Banette, because if they're putting energies on their bench, well, you can pivot into Tapu Lele, and now you can hit their bench Pokemon for quite a bit of damage, hopefully, right? So it's got some good synergy. It's a nice little combo, and it's a nice little way to put some pressure on your opponent's Pokemon for like pretty cheap, and then hopefully you're building up something in the back. So I've got these cards kind of paired together because they go in packages together usually at number 15 on this list. The next cards that I have on this list come in at number 14, and this is Serena, and I love Serena. Serena is so fun. It's like a casino and a gamble card, but also the full art looks fantastic. So I love Serena. I'd never even seen this card or this Pokemon. Like, I think I evolved it in Pokemon Go, and I like never paid attention. But now that I see it in Pocket, I'm like, yes, I love it. Slay. She's the Slay Queen. But basically, this is a stage 2 that you try to rare candy for tempo. And for 1 energy, it flips 3 coins, and you deal 50 damage for each heads. Now, the card that you're going to want to combo with is going to be a supporter by the name of Mallow that is going to heal all damage on your Serena, but it's going to discard all the energy. But the thing is, you're going to just be able to put another energy and start attacking again. So I like to pair this with the Serebii EX from Mythical Island. I kind of treated it like the Raid Boss Executor deck that we saw from a couple of formats ago. So basically, you're just loading 1 energy on the Serena. Hopefully you find your Serebii as well, and you're just loading up your Serebii throughout the game, so that way you have your finisher as your Serebii. But again, cool card. Hopefully it continues seeing some more traction, because I've seen it played in Meowscarada as well. It's just a cool card, man. And man, the 3-kick combo, you got to watch out for those legs. And this is the supporter, by the way. So I pulled a full art of these, so that's why I had to. I pulled a full art Mallow, and then and 2 full art Serenas. I was like, okay, I guess it was destiny for me to play this. But again, here's the effect, just in case you didn't know. It also does apply to Shiinotic, but honestly, Serena was the only card that I really thought was relevant. Okay, coming in at number 13, we're sticking with the theme of grass Pokemon, right? So this is Leaf Cape. It's going to be a Pokemon tool that gives 30 extra HP to a grass type Pokemon. Now, the one thing that I would say is we finally have a way to counter Pokemon tools in the name of Guzma. And so if Guzma didn't exist, this card would be way higher on my list. However, I do think that a lot of people are going to start playing Guzma as the format continues to mature. And I think Guzma is going to render a lot of Pokemon tools a little bit useless. And not necessarily useless in like the form of like you're not going to get value out of them, but I think it's going to be like pivotal turns where your opponent uses Guzma, and like suddenly like your Pokemon that was in your active may just be knocked out and you have to send something else in and they can win the game. So like, yeah, I think Leaf Cape is a great individual card, but I think the conditions for where we are at in the game now with cards like Guzma, I think hard counter this, and I think that opens the door for this card being lower on my list. The other thing that I looked at is there's definitely a lot of grass decks, right? But it's kind of hard sometimes to fit Leaf Cape in, even though like it should be a card that you probably try to fit in. But yeah, you're seeing a lot of grass decks play 2 of these. But again, I just wonder, like, again, as Guzma gets more and more popular and more played, I do wonder what that does to the playability of this card, because then it becomes a liability where, yeah, I got 30 extra HP, but you know, there's a chance that my opponent uses Guzma and suddenly my Pokemon gets knocked out because it only had 30 HP or less. So again, that is an interaction to be aware of, but as just a general one-of card, it's a really good card. You know, Leaf is just a really good card. All right, coming in at number 12, Lily. So Lily doesn't necessarily have like a hard counter like some of these Pokemon tools, right? But for me, the reason why I have Lily coming in at number 12 and not higher is simply because I do think that there's some decks that you just don't have room. Like you're playing a stage 2, but you don't have room for Lily, right? And like that's a little bit of a problem, right? It's the best healing that you can have for a stage 2, but in some decks, you just don't have the space. Now, in the decks that you have space, maybe something like Charizard and Incineroar, Lily is tremendous. You get a lot of value out of it. It's fantastic. But in some decks, you know, maybe like some of these Meowscarada decks, I don't know that you have room to play Lily. And the other thing to kind of look at too is, you know, if you're playing a deck with one stage 2, right? So, you know, you're playing 2 copies of the stage 2, and then the rest of your deck is like basics. Like, can you use Lily, or do you want to use something like an Erica instead? Or do you want to use something like Pokemon Center Lady with all these status effects? So like there's a lot of questions around Lily, but individually it's such a good card that I definitely wasn't going to leave it off this list. And I definitely didn't want to put it, you know, below some of these other cards that are a little bit more of a Gamba, or like kind of like, you know, one attack Pokemon for 1 energy like Tapu Lele and Banette. So again, I think Lily is a great card. It's just an issue of, do you have space? And then also it being limited to stage 2 Pokemon, where, you know, you're going to get the most value if you're playing like multiple stage 2 lines, right? In my opinion. But again, like some decks just have the room, so they can just afford to play this. And some decks are playing 2 stage 2s and they can afford to play this as well. But again, space, I think, is probably the number one issue why I don't have this higher, but it's a tremendous effect. All right, getting into some of the other Pokemon on this list. Number 11, Decidueye EX, 170 HP. And again, if you watched my video recently about engines, a lot of these cards that I'm mentioning were in that video. So you should definitely go check that video out if you haven't already. But Decidueye is a really unique card because it has 2 attacks. And one of the attacks, if you may never use. You may never lose or use Razor Leaf if you're not playing Grass Energy in your Decidueye EX deck. So Decidueye does have the ability to deal 80 damage with Razor Leaf, and then the next turn it can use Pierce the Pain to deal 100 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon with damage on it. So like that's also an option that shouldn't be forgotten. And then when you combine this with cards like Lily or cards like Leaf Cape, this Pokemon gets really thick and hard to one-hit KO. So again, I think that this card has a lot of upside. I think the biggest issue is finding the partners to go with it, right? Like, what are you going to pair this with? Are you going to pair this with Greninja? Are you going to pair this with Spiritomb? Are you going to pair this with something else that, you know, deals passive damage, right? Are you going to pair this with something that, you know, like a Snorlax and Poison Barb? You know, like there's so many ways to cook with this card, and I think that like ultimately we're still kind of trying to decide like what the best way to play this card is. And so in 2 or 3 weeks when we come back and re-rank these, Decidueye may have a really good glow up, right? Because we finally found a really good engine for it, and we're finally able to utilize all this bulk and all the healing that also can kind of combine with the fact that it's dealing sniping damage of 100 damage across the board to your opponent's Pokemon. The next card I have on the list is going to be number 10, Incineroar EX. Now, I mentioned earlier with the honorable mentions that Turtonator Kiawe might be the way to play Incineroar, but for right now, I do have it ranked above some of the other EXs, including Decidueye EX, simply because I think that this is a little bit better individually. Individually, without adding other cards around it, I think Incineroar EX has the ability to sweep, right? However, with cards like Decidueye, I think you do need a lot of other cards to kind of like build around it to really make it super effective. But with Incineroar, you can rare candy this thing on curve and just start going to town, right? And so to me, that was really appealing and why I put this card ahead. But again, with two different attacks, a 1 energy attack as well as a 3 energy attack, you can tell that this card was designed for rare candy, much like the Charizard from Shining Revelry. And who knows, time will tell if people prefer Charizard or Incineroar. Again, you know, hey, the fact that it only needs 3 energy, but it doesn't self-ramp is a little bit of give and take. So again, there's a little bit of give and take with this card, but overall, I think it's a very cool card. I think it's a very legitimate card, and I look forward to seeing how the meta continues to shape out and see how people cook with Incineroar. Coming in at number 9, I've got Lycanroc, and the main reason why I've got this card so high on the list is just because Rampardos is that dang good. If you rare candy Rampardos on curve, you're going to be in really good shape, right? And then if you also have that Lycanroc to back it up, right, because that's probably the active Pokemon, you know, you've got a lot of damage that you can deal to your opponent's Pokemon, and they're all one prizers. So we can't discount the fact that Lycanroc and Rampardos have great synergy and also are one prizers, meaning that they are very flexible and they're going to deal a lot of damage to your opponent's Pokemon. And I think that that's the biggest reason why I have it so high on this list. I think right now, like if you made me choose like what deck is better, Decidueye, Incineroar, or Rampardos, I'm saying Rampardos, right? And Lycanroc is a lot of a big reason to do with that, in my opinion. Now, there's other ways to play Rampardos, but I think Lycanroc Rampardos is definitely towards the top of that list of best ways to play Rampardos, and because of that, I got it coming in at number 9. And let's take a look at the next Pokemon on the list. Coming in at number 8 is going to be Crabominable EX. Now, this card has been compared to Exeggutor EX for a lot of reasons, and honestly, it definitely has delivered. The weirdest thing about this card is trying to figure out what to pair with it, right? You've got to decide, are you going to pair stuff like Palkia with it, whether that's the origin form or the EX? Are you going to pair stuff with like Manaphy with it, even though it only requires 1 energy to attack? Are you going to pair stuff like Toucannon with it, with Rare Candy? I mean, there's a lot of options that you have with it. Obviously, there's even stuff in the water subtype, something like a Greninja that you could add with it. There's a lot of ways to cook with this card, and I do think that that gives it a leg up on some of the other cards on this list. And I've got it above Lycanroc. That could definitely change. But again, I think Crabominable, like just card value on its own, is just like a really, really good card on its own. And is it going to sweep your opponent? I don't know that it's going to sweep your opponent, similar to how like an Incineroar could, for example. However, I do think that it has a lot of good support cards around it when you start talking about Arita, when you start talking about the other water Pokemon that you can pair with it, that is a little bit easier to cook with, right? Like I think Crabominable is a lot easier to cook with than something like Incineroar, right? Like you got to dedicate spots like with Rare Candy, you got to dedicate like another Pokemon so you don't insta-lose to the electric or Ikorio. But with Crabominable, like it's pretty straightforward, right? You play this thing alongside Palkias, Greninjas, Manaphy's. If you want to just ultimately lose to Oricorio, pair it with Gyarados, right? So you've got a lot of different ways that you can play the card, and I think that that kind of like gives it the leg up on some of the other Pokemon that I've evaluated so far on this top 15 list. The next card on the list is going to be a Pokemon tool. Coming in at number 7, you've got Poison Barb. Poison Barb is going to make your opponent's active Pokemon poisoned if it attacks and deals damage, to your Pokemon. So again, Poison Barb is a way to get passive damage on your opponent. And although it can be healed away with stuff like Pokemon Center Lady, the thing is, if this was Rocky Helmet, they would be healing the damage away anyways, right? And realistically, even if they attack it only one time and it stays there, that Pokemon stays in the active for multiple turns, you're actually dealing more damage than a Rocky Helm would do. So like that's also something to think about. The reason why I do have like Pokemon tools a little bit lower on the list again is just due to Guzma. And also like the fact that poison barb, like there are Pokemon that are immune to poison, right? Like Arceus, if you ever run into Arceus Carnivine, for whatever reason right now in this meta, I don't think it's really out there, but if you do, obviously Arceus EX is immune to poison barb, and like that's just gonna feel really bad. But again, like I do think that poison barb has a lot of ways to be played, right? We've talked about Pyukapuku. We've talked about different things like Snorlax in my other video where I talked about engines. And so I think that there's a lot of ways that you can play Poison Barb and get value out of it. And I think that that's one of the big reasons why I have it on this list. I think that Poison Barb is going to be definitely a card that people are going to play. Like I said, the biggest thing is with Guzma around now, I think Guzma just hard counters a lot of these Pokemon tools, and as a one-of in a deck, a Guzma, I think it can nullify a lot of the effects of some of these Pokemon tools. But the cool thing is, say they Guzma your Poison Barb, if they still have to retreat or get rid of the status condition, right? If they, triggered the poison. So that's definitely something to think about. All right, coming in at number 6, and some people are going to be surprised about this, but I love Toucannon. I think it is a fantastic splashable card. If you're already playing Rare Candy, I think that you should look at your deck and think, hey, can I play a line of Toucannon? Like, is that possible? Because this card just creates so many donk scenarios, right? Like this card can basically end the game very quickly if your opponent is not able to get another Pokemon that's above, or just get another Pokemon sometimes, right? Like sometimes Toucannon, Rare Candy, you hit them for 70 and the game's over because their basic Pokemon only had 70 or less HP, and like that's it. And then at the same time, it's got enough bulk to usually absorb more than one attack from your opponent's Pokemon, that early in the game. So I think Toucannon is one of the best cards and the most splashable cards in the entire set. And honestly, I think that a lot of people are probably sleeping on this card because they looked at the normal cards in the set and they were like, oh man, the normal Pokemon, they stink, whatever. But like when you play this card and you Rare Candy it on curve, you're just kind of like, this is pretty powerful early game, and now I can focus on my other Pokemon and get to my other strategy, right? It allows me time to build up my primary attacker, right? So Toucannon is a secondary attacker, don't get me wrong, but it can end games very quickly and suddenly, and it also can buy you time to build up your main win condition. So very, very powerful card, and I mean like, dang dude, I am a fan of the Toucan Sam. Coming in at number 5 is going to be Pyukamuku. This is a Pokemon that's going to surprise a lot of people. If you haven't played against this card, you're going to be a little bit in for a run because when you see this card pop into the active, you may like click on it to read it and be like, wait a minute, do I want to attack? Like, do I want to knock this thing out? Like, hold on, let me do some math here. And that's the situation that this card creates. And the thing is, there's like not a ton of sniping damage in the meta, right? Like you've obviously got things that can snipe, but like for example, Darkrai can deal with this, right? Decidueye can one-shot this, right? Hitmonlee can, snipe it on the bench if it gets to the bench. But like as far as dealing with it, like dude, this card is a little bit hard to deal with in a weird way, and you always have to plan for taking that 50 damage if you knock it out while it's in the active. The other thing is, if your opponent is playing Water Energy and Pyukamuku, like you are kind of getting chipped, right? You're getting hit for 20 damage, and if you knock it out, you're taking 50 more. So again, like there's a lot of kind of like bad flashbacks that you may have to like attacking a Druddigon with Rocky Helmet, right? But this is even potentially more damage than that, right? And so like definitely pay attention to Pyukamuku and like how it kind of pops up in the meta, and I'm very curious to see like just how popular this card gets, because there's a world where this card could get like Druddigon levels of popular, right? Like it's a very interesting card. All right, maybe not Druddigon. Maybe that's a slight exaggeration because there is a while where Druddigon was like everywhere and just being thrown into every deck. But again, who knows? I could definitely see there being a lot of traction behind this card. So pay attention to Pyukamuku, and good luck if you play across, if you sit down across from it and you're like, oh wait, MBB was right. This card is kind of, I needed, yeah, whoa, this is a real card. Coming in at number 4, I've got Guzma, the supporter with a it's got that immersive rarity as well, right? But again, Guzma, in my opinion, makes a lot of decks a little bit worse, right? Like Skarmory still hits you for 50 for one turn, but Guzma can potentially make it do 20 for like the next couple of turns. And like that's a big deal, right? Like that's a huge deal. Also, Guzma can create just turns where you win the game, right? You Guzma, and all of a sudden their Pokemon that had 20 HP and a giant cape gets knocked out, right? Or all of a sudden their Pokemon with 30 HP with a leaf cape gets knocked out. So like there's all sorts of scenarios where Guzma can literally just like swing a game, right? Like I've had that happen multiple times playing this card. If you haven't played Guzma yet, jam it in a deck and just kind of like get a feel for it as a one of, because like this card swings games, right? Like there's some times where people are like kind of like really depending on Pokemon tools for chip damage or Pokemon tools for that extra bit of HP to survive one more turn, and suddenly Guzma just erases that, right? And so Guzma I think is going to be really good as a one of in a lot of decks, and I expect it to be played in a lot of decks for probably the rest of the format, right? Like I think if you have room for like a one-of tech trainer card, I think Guzma is a card that you've got to look at, because again, it's a very hard counter for a lot of the decks that are focusing on like getting good usage out of their Pokemon tools. Like, you know, imagine if we had Guzma in the Darkrai Giratina meta, right? Could you imagine how many games would have been won with Guzma, right? So just even though we're not in that format anymore, keep in mind it still can have that kind of effect on a lot of games. So definitely pay attention to Guzma. I got it at number 4 on this list for a reason. It's a very good card, and I think you're going to see a lot of it, especially if you're playing in ranked and in tournaments. Number 3 is going to be the Electric Oricorio. I really wanted to see a Pokemon that could like not be damaged by EX Pokemon, and sure enough, they delivered. I couldn't believe it, but like, yes, we've got Oricorio coming in here, and it's just a card that like is an insta lose for some people that decide not to build their deck without like any out for Oricorio, right? And even in like some of those decks that can deal with Oricorio, it can be a little bit tricky, right? Like Darkrai can kind of deal with Oricorio, but it still can like also lose to Oricorio depending on like if there's Giant Cape on the Oricorio, if there's Heal on the Oricorio, if they're playing Magnezone and all of a sudden, you know, Magnezone KOs them before they can deal with the Oricorio. Like there's all sorts of things that can go wrong. So again, Oricorio is very, very influential in my opinion to how the game is played. And that is a big reason why I've got it so high up on this list. Now, the big question is going to be, can somebody build an electric deck that doesn't auto lose to Rampardos, but can still play Oricorio? And then also, are people just going to continue playing Oricorio in decks where they don't even play electric energy, right? Like we've seen some Darkrai Giratina decks that are just playing one Oricorio just to like have as a buffer, right? Like it's kind of interesting, right? But again, really good card, very influential, and very good. Definitely am very surprised that they made this card, but also like, hey, it's good. We finally got a good check to EX Pokemon. Coming in at number 2 is going to be Solgaleo EX. I think Solgaleo definitely lived up to the hype of being a cover card. Lunala, maybe not so much. I don't know. Maybe in a week, Lunala creeps into my top 15. Maybe in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever. But I can tell you right now, Solgaleo EX is legit, right? There's like multiple ways to play Solgaleo EX, right? You can play Solgaleo EX in Skarmory, Solgaleo EX in Excadrill, Solgaleo EX and Excavalier. You can play Solgaleo EX in Toucannon. Yeah. Or, you know, hey, you can just, you know, cook whatever you want with Solgaleo and kind of just see what happens. But Solgaleo is just very aggressive and bulky, right? Like, obviously, Charizard just hard checks Solgaleo if it comes out with Rare Candy on curve, right? But there's not a lot of scenarios where Solgaleo like just like straight up gets dealt with, right? Meowscarada can deal with it pretty well. But again, like Solgaleo as an individual card is just like very powerful. And obviously being able to rare candy it helps a lot. But keep in mind, if you're just like evolving it on curve, like basic stage 1, stage 2, it still can attack on curve if you go if you go first. So like there's a lot of ways that Solgaleo is good. It's just we're going to probably be in the process of the next like week or so, 2 weeks or so of trying to figure out like what's the best partner. Is the best partner Magierna, because Magierna kind of like it's pretty bulky. You're probably already playing tools and then like it hits Oricorio, it one hits it, right? Or are you going to play Skarmory just because Skarmory is so fast? But again, there's stuff like Guzma out there that kind of like discard your tools. So again, like I personally lean towards Toucanon and lean towards Magierna, personally, right? But again, right now, the early results, there's a lot of people playing Skarmory. There's even some crazy people playing Excadrill, right? And then Escavalier is obviously an option. But again, Solgaleo EX, fantastic card. If you pull it and you pull a playset, 2 of them, right, definitely a good deck to jam in ranked or bring to tournaments. Definitely a good card, right? There's only one card that you could say, in my opinion, is better than Solgaleo. So let's get to it. And that's rare candy, right? I have made so many videos about like, are they going to bring rare candy to the game? Is rare candy coming? And I could not believe it. Part of me still can't believe that they brought rare candy to the game as is. They didn't change anything. They just said, yeah, put it in the game. They didn't make it a supporter, right? Like they've made so many other trainers supporters as a little bit of like a nerf, right? But in this case, they said, nah, keep it an item. Put rare candy in the game. We'll do it live, right? And because of this card, we are now seeing a new era of Pokemon Pocket, and I call it the combo era. For the first time in Pokemon Pocket, in my opinion, a lot of the top decks are combo oriented. And what I mean by combo oriented is, I mean, not only are you trying to like evolve like a family of Pokemon, right? Like basic stage 1, stage 2. Now you're trying to combo your basic with this trainer card with a stage 2, and then probably like a supporter or a tool, right? Like you're playing, like a lot of these decks are playing like 3 and 4 card combos now, right? Like think about this. An example of a combo before rare candy was Weavile, Darkrai, and Dawn, right? And that was a 4 card combo, right? You needed Sneasel to evolve into Weavile, you needed Darkrai, and you needed Dawn. Yeah, that's a 4 card combo, right? And the payoff of a 4 card combo was like what, 90 damage, right? Now think about this. You rare candy a Solgaleo, your 3 card combo is now 120 damage. You know what I mean? Like, okay, you rare candy your Toucanon. Okay, you're doing 70 damage on turn 3 of the game. You know what I mean? Like, it's like you start thinking about this and like, man, like this has drastically changed. Like now my 3 card combos are stronger than previous 4 card combos, right? And even like some, obviously like Rampardos, right? Like you need Fossil, you need Rampardos, you need rare candy, right? And then you probably need a way to get into the active. But again, like just looking at the state of the game because of rare candy, it feels like a different game with this set, right? It feels like a completely different game. And a big reason why this game feels so different than 2 weeks ago, obviously Oricorio, obviously Guzma, obviously Solgaleo EX, but like a lot of the reason why this game feels so different is rare candy. And so that's why I've got it at number 1 on the list. We were joking around in one of the content creator discords, and somebody said that before rare candy came out, I don't think rare candy is going to be that good. I think people are overhyping it. I think it's overhyped. I think it's going to be overhyped. And honestly, I'm just going to be honest. I think the card has completely delivered. I think the card has been exactly what a lot of us expected. I think it's very powerful. I think it warps games. I think it automatically decides games in some factors. And like, maybe that's a good thing, maybe that's a bad thing. But for whatever reason, you know, for however you feel about it, right? this card is very powerful. And as a single card for the rest of this game's history, as long as Rare Candy is in the format, from now on, you have to look at every stage 2 of, how good is this with Rare Candy? And that's why I've got it at number 1 on the list. I think this card is future-proofed. I think it's arguably the most broken card from an item point of view that we've seen in the game so far, right? Like Giratina last set was probably the best individual Pokemon that we had seen up to that point. Now, I don't know. That's a good question, right? But as far as item cards go, obviously Pokeball is great, but Rare Candy may be the best item card that we've seen in the game so far. So that's my top 15. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. What cards you would move up, what cards I didn't have on the list. Was there some cards that I left off? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear from you. And until next time, I'll catch you later. Peace.